Now we know the reason why AMD was reluctant on showing a large number of titles in their RDNA 3 presentation and pranced around useless selling points along with ray tracing comparisons to last gen RDNA 2. It honestly seems like AMD doesn't even care about competing with Nvidia, but rather would join them in capitalizing on the sales which will come from their diehard fans and call it a day. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. The review embargo for AMD's highly anticipated RDNA 3 based GPUs lifted yesterday, and it seems like the reviews have stirred up the PC hardware community. Here's my hot take on the 7900 series. I believe AMD should have called the 7900 XTX a 7800 XT, and the 7900 XT should have just been a 7800 non-XT, and they should have been way cheaper. I was sort of thinking about this before when AMD announced the cards, but after seeing all these reviews, this has just solidified that for me. If we're going to call out Nvidia for their anti-consumer behavior, then AMD is no exception either. Just because you may appear as less greedy than another company doesn't make it right all of a sudden. Let's get that out of the way and not give one special treatment over the other. Now, if you're not interested in what I have to say and you're just going to defend AMD, a corporation, regardless of what's being shown to you, then hey, feel free to leave your dislike and click off the video. I wanted to start off with looking at some slides that AMD had presented over this past year. During an investors conference this past summer, AMD had shown a slide which projected performance per watt to be greater than 50% for RDNA 3 over RDNA 2. This was due to a combination of things, such as a more advanced 5nm node from TSMC, architectural improvements, chiplet package processing, and more. Fast forward to their RDNA 3 unveil presentation, and AMD presented a slide which shows that it's up to 54% performance per watt. There's also another slide that was leaked and not shown to the public, which mentions 1.54x performance per watt, and that RDNA 3 was architected to exceed 3 GHz. I'm sure you all saw many reviews, and nobody hit 3 GHz or beyond out of the box, and AMD's own official specs have the clock speeds well below that. That tells me something went wrong with RDNA 3 during its development, but we'll talk more about that later on in the video. I wanted to take a look at a few benchmarks from some reviews I saw. I urge you all to check out all the different reviews for yourselves and also watch or read as many reviews as you can. In Hardware Unboxed review, they found on average the 7900 XTX to be on par with Nvidia's RTX 4080 graphics card over a 16 game average. They did show some games where the Radeon GPU held an advantage and had it very close to the RTX 4090, if not even beating it in some instances, which, of course AMD fans were cherry picking in comments online. And there were some benchmarks where the 7900 XTX did very poorly, such as Forza and Halo Infinite, which is odd considering those are Microsoft titles, and typically AMD's always done well in those games. Now heading over to Tech Power-Up's review, and I found their results to be showing a similar story. Where there were titles that showed an advantage in AMD's favor, there were some which showed the 4080 had a lead, but on average, both GPUs were offering similar performance as indicated by the relative performance chart. Computer Base's results also lined up with what we saw from Tech Power Up and Hardware Unboxed. They found the 7900 XTX and 4080 to be basically neck and neck, but you also have to look at things from a game-by-game basis, and you'll find titles where AMD is doing remarkably well, but there are also titles where they don't, but most would show you it's trading blows with the 4080. The problem is that many people expected the 7900 XTX wasn't going to be just as fast as the 4080 on average, but would reliably sit in between the 4080 and 4090, but it fails to do that apart from a few select benchmarks. Along with that, the 7900 XTX was only 35% faster than the 6950 XT at 4K on average, which is a terrible showing considering AMD talked about a greater than 50% performance per watt improvement. You can't even blame users for overhyping themselves when AMD had slides that stated up to 1.7x performance improvement in their own cherry-picked titles. A lot of people thought this up to referred to an average across games, but it really looks like they were referring to max FPS, and if that's the case, they need to be called out on this bullshit. It's just misleading, and it's gonna come back to bite them in the ass. In fact, it's probably already is. The RX 7900 XT actually looks worse. The best this GPU was able to manage was about 3090 Ti levels of performance, which basically means it was only able to match or slightly exceed the 6950 XT in terms of raw rasterization performance. They clearly missed that mark, and by a long shot. If you had taken a look at the specs for the 6950 XT and compare it to the 7900 XT, based on the information AMD has told us, I would have expected higher performance, but it seems like RDNA 3 really isn't that much faster than RDNA 2. It seems like something went wrong during the RDNA 3 development, and it may just have needed more time in the oven. One of the other things I was thinking about was perhaps there's a lot of latency from the chiplets. We saw this problem happen with Zen 1 and Zen 2. When it comes to ray tracing performance, comparing the 7900 XTX to last gen's RDNA 2 graphics cards, of course there will be a huge difference. I mean, AMD themselves showed that on their presentation. But RDNA 2's performance when it comes to ray tracing wasn't even that great. It was so terrible that you might as well consider it to be non-existent to begin with, so it's not really a great selling point. And when you compare that to what Nvidia has to offer, they are behind by a significant margin in most titles. At best, the 7900 XTX is able to offer 3090 Ti performance, and against the 4080, that's clearly not enough. It's significantly slower for a $1,000 GPU, which is a damn shame. And at this point, I don't know why people have come to accept AMD being slower at ray tracing than Nvidia, and they get some sort of free pass for that. Take a look at Intel. They just entered the GPU market, and their first iteration were already doing pretty well against Nvidia. So I would have expected RDNA 3 to land in between Ampere and Lovelace for ray tracing performance, but it seems like the best they can really manage is just Ampere performance. You can say that you don't care about ray tracing, and that's fine. That's actually a good thing because it helps you save more money. But it doesn't mean that it dismisses AMD from not having great performance with this feature that is being adopted by more and more games with each passing month. And while we're on that subject, $1,000 plus for a GPU, at that point you'll have a user who will start to care about all these features, ray tracing performance, software features, driver stability, and more. Power efficiency also doesn't seem that great. People poked fun at Nvidia's 40 series for having high power consumption, but that was far from the truth. In fact, when compared to the 4080, both the 7900 XTX and 7900 XT were consuming more power. Computer Base had a portion where they measured power consumption with FPS limiters, so essentially when you're capped, the GPU doesn't need to work as hard as it's not able to render frames past that target, and RDNA 3 showed absolutely abysmal results here. It's not efficient, or if there's driver issues, AMD really should have fixed this before launch. Tech PowerUp has also measured power consumption in other scenarios, and they found some pretty weird stuff, such as ridiculously high power consumption when using dual monitors, and also during video playback. Those kinds of things I think may be due to a weird driver bug, and can be alleviated with future updates, but it's one of those moments where you'd think they'd have fixed them when testing these cards before launch. I do also recall Hardware Unboxed in his review mentioning they had some driver related issues and crashes. This is the stuff that's highlighted and adds on to the AMD has bad drivers mantra. That's not to say Nvidia doesn't have their own problems, but when you're the one trying to gain market share, you really gotta be on top of these things. So in a nutshell, with the 7900 XTX, what we have here is a graphics card which is about as fast as the RTX 4080 in terms of rasterization performance, loses significantly when it comes to ray tracing performance, and isn't even more power efficient. There are also other features like better upscaling tech, DLSS versus FSR. Nvidia has frame generation, better software support and drivers, along with better workstation performance support. The only thing that this graphics card really has going for it is its pricing, and that is also not that great. Don't get me wrong, $1,000 is better than $1,200, but if your main selling point is, hey, we're not as overpriced as those guys, then you really shouldn't be celebrating that as a win. And let's be real here, for the vast majority of consumers in this space, where Nvidia is so largely dominant in market share, people will gladly pay the $200 difference if it means they end up with an Nvidia card. I doubt they're really that strapped for cash where that doesn't matter to them. It's just the way the market works. This isn't me hating on AMD. These are facts out there that you guys can take a look at. Whether it's sites like YouTube or Reddit, those comment sections are echo chambers that don't really reflect reality. You guys remember that not so long ago, those same AMD fans tried to peddle the BS that Zen 4 was amazing and would quote unquote sell like hotcakes, when that never ended up happening. And also, we're talking about $1,000 plus GPUs. That isn't where the vast majority of users in this market reside. Now, if Nvidia wants, they can just drop the price of the RTX 4080 down to the same price as the RX 7900 XTX, and if they do, then there really wouldn't be any reason to consider AMD anymore. However, due to the lack of ray tracing performance and other features I mentioned, I doubt Nvidia will be in a hurry to drop prices, as the 7900 XTX actually made the 4080 look like a half-decent product. It's not just me saying this, but I've been reading comments online, and before everyone was saying that they hated the RTX 4080, and now they're looking at it in a more positive light thanks to AMD, which for some reason is the trap AMD always keeps on falling into with every generation. They did it with the R9 Fury, it made the 980 Ti look way better, Vega made the 1080 look better, Radeon 7 made the 1080 Ti and the RTX 20 series look better. I honestly think that AMD should not have called these cards the 7900 XTX and 7900 XT. The 7800 series seemed more appropriate given the fact that it competes with the 4080. When it came to last gen with the RX 6000 series, the 6800 XT competed against the RTX 3080, and the 6900 series went up against the RTX 3090 and 3090 Ti. The 7900 XTX doesn't even compete with the RTX 4090. Therefore, I think this is kind of misleading, and I feel like AMD probably knew what they were doing with that when it comes to, well, the whole marketing and shenanigans. I'm also concerned for the rest of the product stack. If the 7900 XT wasn't that much faster than the 6950 XT, then what do you think will happen once AMD releases the RX 7800 XT? You'll essentially be getting a 6800 XT with around 5% better raster performance, maybe a little bit more, but it's not going to be anything, drastic, and you'll have better ray tracing performance for the same price, and that to me is just ridiculous. If the 7900 XTX was called a 7800 XTX and priced at $750 or even $800, then I would have had really no complaints about this card. But AMD decided that, instead of competing with Nvidia, we're going to join them and just milk the consumers. You would think that shifting to chiplets, AMD would have really shaken up the market, whether that was delivering great performance or offering impeccable value over the competition, and AMD has achieved neither of those things. So what now? Are we going to say that, wait for RDNA 4? Before it was wait for Vega, then it was wait for Navi, then it was wait for Big Navi, wait for RDNA 3, and then, this cycle is just going to keep repeating. At some point, you just have to stop with this. The RTX 4080 seriously disappointed, and, when it came to the RTX 4090, even though that was looking like a better improvement gen on gen, $1,600 is just way too out of reach for the vast majority of gamers. Everyone hoped that with RDNA 3, with the move to chiplets, we would start to shift back to the realm of normalcy, but I'd say we're now worse off. Nvidia might even be celebrating the launch of RDNA 3, that is, if they even care. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.